This year, Avid students, kids whose family backgrounds do not include a college experience, invited me to go on the Northern California college tour with them, and I was honored. One of the stops, of course, was Cal Berkeley. I went to Stanford for a week, studied the history of the Great Depression and World War II with other teachers, and our teacher was David Kennedy, who had written a book on those years, which won the Pulitzer Prize. I tried very hard not to look too adoringly at Kennedy while he taught us. That was difficult, because not only is he brilliant, but he's a real human being, engaging, witty, and you could tell he loved the history of the time because he so admired the Americans who had lived it. Americans like my mom. On the Avid trips, I quickly learned to love Stanford's rival, Cal. But one thing I thought with a little sadness at Cal was that my mom, Patricia Margaret Keefe, should have been here. She grew up poor, a child of the Great Depression. She was a human footnote in the immense body of Kennedy's scholarship. Her father, my Irish-American grandfather, deserted the family in the mid-1920s, so my grandmother worked long hours as a waitress in a Taft, California coffee shop. This meant that my mother, as a little girl, spent a lot of time alone. Those years left their mark on her. We had a can cupboard longer than the cupboards in the back of my classroom, but hers was full of food that we'd never eat, because the thought of going hungry must have terrified her. That fear marked her generation. Despite her childhood, she's there in the 1938 Taft Union High School yearbook, and she's in CSF, GAA. She is class secretary and class vice president. She'd made her mark. Still, going to college for the daughter of a waitress from an isolated outpost on the oil frontier must have been out of the question. Earl Denton, the first superintendent of the CMR school district and a family friend, said that my mother, whose education ended with high school, was one of the most brilliant people he'd ever met. I remember her devouring the works of the Jesuit theologian and anthropologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who argued that evolution was no contradiction of faith. In fact, it was a divinely inspired process. She, as I would years later, while reading books like Roll, Jordan, Roll, History of American Slavery, she wrote more in the margins than Chardin had written in the text. When I was very little, we played school. She even rang a handbell when recess was over. It had been my grandmother's. Dora Gregory, her mother-in-law, had been a schoolmarm in the Ozark foothills. My first day of formal education was in the first grade in a two-room school, Branch Elementary, in the upper Arroyo Grande Valley. I remember realizing with a little shock of pleasure that I could read the names of my classmates as our teacher, Mrs. Brown, wrote them on the blackboard. My mother and I hadn't been playing school at all. She'd taught me how to read. So many years later, on that visit to Cal, while the Avid kids explored, I had the briefest and loveliest mental image of my mother, about 1938 or 39, blouse, pleated skirt, saddle shoes, bobby socks, with her books and notebooks spread out on one of those lush, verdant lawns, studying between classes. My mother was a beautiful woman, but the most beautiful thing about her may have been her mind. And I think that's why I enjoy these particular trips with this particular group of kids. It's my way of repaying Mom. One of them might take her place, studying in the sunlight on the lawn at a place like Memorial Glade. She would love that idea. And she would love these kids because she would understand them completely. Despite my ne'er-do-well grandfather, I believe completely that my mother's empathy and her love for the written word had deep genetic and psychological roots in Ireland's County Wicklow. So she would love, without hesitation, the avid kids who show the incredible desire, the hunger to improve themselves, the same desires that she'd had, and who extend themselves to help their classmates. She believed that all of us are intricately and intimately connected, and that this connection requires us to be responsible to and accountable for each other. The young person who understands these things is close to my mother's heart.
I took a stroll down the old long walk in the day. I met a little girl and we started to talk on a fine soft day. And I asked you, friend,